Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Conscious Body Conversations. I'm Jessie Lucas of Embodied Movement Training, and I'm so excited to bring you another really deep and interesting conversation. Today, we have Nancy Loeffler, who's going to be talking about grief. She is a grief journey guide. And if you don't know what that is, I'm not surprised because it is a really unique way of approaching grief, working with your grief as a path of transformation. And I'm going to let her share all of the goods on that. And what I'd like you to do to take this in, because I know grief can kind of be a, touchy subject. Take a moment and take a breath. Get in your body. If you know anything about my work, it's all about the body presence of it. And that's where I want this information to land for you today, in a place of not just mentally taking it in, but letting it go through your emotions and actually sink into your body. So with that level of presence, I know Nancy has some bits about like how going through this transformation can seed the future, and some really unique tools around how you can do that. So Nancy, we've done some deep work in the past together. You are one of my favorite humans on this planet. I am so honored to have you here today. Please share with us your story and your wisdom.
Thank you, Jessie. It's so great to be here with you today. And yes, we're talking about grief. And I wouldn't be talking about grief unless I had my own story of grief. And it's a story that for a long time I didn't want to tell. And that's actually why we started working together, because I needed to be able to create the capacity in my body to hold that story. And the story is this: over 20 years ago, my 17-year-old daughter, Leah, died. And that set my life on a path that I didn't want to go on. I didn't want it to go on. I didn't want to face my own grief. And yet, shortly after she died, the message I receive is that losing Leah is too high a price to pay to not live the life that I was meant to live. And I still get, I still feel that the same way that I received it the first time I received it, every time I speak it out loud. My grief journey became about excavating that life. I didn't exactly know what that meant. I knew, though, that I was going to have to feel my feelings of grief. And as you said, we don't like to feel grief. It's uncomfortable. We push it away. We think that if we push it away long enough, we won't have to feel it. And I turned to a practice that was already a part of my life at the time, and it's deals with presence, as you were talking about. It's a present moment awareness practice called Samyama, and it was already a part of my life, as I said. So I felt comfortable going there. I had someone I trusted that I worked with as a Samyama facilitator, and it's about bringing our feelings, all of our feelings, the full spectrum of our feelings, into our hearts in the moment that we feel them. And we hear a lot about living in the moment. This is not living in the moment or for the moment. It's being present here now. And I could probably talk for hours and hours about what it is. And until we actually experience it, because it's a direct experience practice, we don't really know what it is. And when I saw how powerful it was at helping me to meet my grief, to allow my feelings, my pain and my discomfort and my raw, all the feelings that came up around losing Leah, in my heart, in the moment that they arose, when I saw how powerful Samyama was at helping me to do that without the stories that my head wanted to tell me, what if I'd been a better mother, or what if I had not gone to work that day, and all those stories that in the early days I was trying to spin a story to make the outcome be different, and that wasn't going to happen. So when I saw how powerful Samyama was at helping me to unravel those stories and to eventually shift the pain, I became certified as a Samyama practitioner in 2009. And the more I become present, the more I learn about presence. And on the flip side of that, because each moment is new, I was starting at the beginning. So you mentioned presence seeds the future. That's something that came into my consciousness in my own Samyama sittings fairly recently. And what I mean by that is when we're in the present moment, we're actually seeding the future without really knowing it. Because the one example of that is that because I was able to work through my grief. And another thing I want to mention here before I tell you this story is that we think that grief is, or I thought that grief um, was only when we experienced the death of a loved one. And what I found out through this journey is that grief is a lifelong journey. And this past year probably let a lot of us know that in so many ways. The loss of being able to meet in person, to have a cup of coffee with a friend and give them a hug, and everything in between that, and schools and jobs and just everything that we lost last year. And what did we gain? We probably gained a lot too. That's the transformational piece. This year, I had a granddaughter. My son and his partner, in July, our granddaughter Aria Soleil was born. And in late August, my husband Dan and I rented an RV to be safe, drove up from Raleigh, North Carolina to Minneapolis and met Aria. And when I met Aria, my heart was just burst open with joy. And what I realized is that if I had not said yes to my grief journey all along the way, following those breadcrumbs for 20 years, because the grief journey is never over, I would not have been able to meet Aria with a full and open heart. And that just takes my breath away when I feel what that feels like in my body. And then I started thinking about all the other things that I've been able to do because I said yes to my journey in the moment. I wrote a book about my journey. I talk often about my journey. I said yes to your work so that I could hold my story and tell it in the way that I was being called to tell it. So the transformational piece is saying yes to where life is calling us. We're always being called.
That, I want to just pause right there for a second. First of all, thank you. I had like full body chills just listening to that part of and I've heard your story and, the different chapters and been with, watching along the journey as these things have progressed. Two of the main points that you just used that I think really, people can say transformation. Okay, yeah, I want a transformation. I am here and I want to be here. And especially around grief, it's like, I don't want to feel this way. Two of the things you said that really kind of uncover what's going on there, you said excavate. And then you talked about all the stories, you were trying to spin these tales to produce a different outcome that wasn't going to happen. And the visual I got was like the more those stories were kind of going on and on repeat, the more it was burying what really was the gift in that of the transformation. Right. And so to have this tool that allowed you to access a raw presence, to be able to kind of peel through those layers of those stories, to excavate, to get to that piece.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, everything along the way, all the way up until, and then, continuing on, from meeting your granddaughter, now watching her grow, and myself having watched you grow with getting your book completed, and then not just completed, but published and out there, and then not just out there, but going out to speak about it when we were allowed to go out and speak in live and in person.
Right.
and to be able to be embodied, to really be present with yourself and allow your story to come through without the physical burden of having all that buried. You are free to experience yourself, and if you can do it, you have the capacity to guide others through it. And I just think that that's beautiful. So I think that that was really simple and accessible. One of the things I'm finding in these conversations is a theme of ease and accessibility. Sometimes doing the deep hard work, and I know processing grief is deep hard work.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it's not easy. And second of all, getting access to the right kind of support has been challenging. And I think that that's one of the really great gifts of this time right now, and having kind of global access to some wise guides. There is now this sense of ease and accessibility to do the deeper work, and the tools that these guides like yourself have really allow you to kind of lean into that with a little more comfort, with a little more like, okay, I can take the next step. I can do that. And then as you do that, you realize, oh my gosh, that transformation is happening. I know, because I've watched you do it yourself. And, that's kind of the level of work in my own work that I do.
Yeah.
But the way you described it definitely keyed in on that, the ease and accessibility. Do you have anything, like, did that spark anything for you? Anything you want to kind of add to that piece?
Yeah, it's the presence. This sounds so counterintuitive. Presence is one of the resources that makes being with those uncomfortable feelings, the painful feelings, the really raw feelings that we don't want to be with. It makes it more comfortable. It makes it accessible, as you said. And when I was working with my own facilitator with Samyama, because she was holding this space for me, I could go much deeper. Now, I also know how to do it for myself. And that's another great part of this practice. When you learn it with a facilitator, you also learn how to do it for yourself. So being with those feelings, and that's why I named my company Being with Grief, because being with those feelings through our hearts makes them more accessible.
That piece on just presence, that counterintuitive piece. I know in my work, I have a chapter called Dive into the Darkness. And it's all about that, right? That support to, like, when you're going in, something to keep you resilient, to keep you steady. I think that's the key piece that allows for that kind of work to happen. I know there's so much more to your story and the whole conversation around grief as transformation. What is one thing, to keep this kind of digestible in the moment, what is one thing that you would like our audience to kind of walk away with, whether it's something that they can practice or kind of chew on as they leave this conversation? And then make sure you let us know where we can find you. I know you have a Samyama group. I know you have your book, your website. So let us know where we can find out more about you as well.
Yeah, the one thing I would like everyone to remember is that the present moment is always available and it's always accessible. And we receive everything we need in the present moment. And breathing into your heart, learning how to come into our hearts and resting there is one of the first ways that I teach my structure of present moment awareness. So just learning how to come into our hearts, because most of us didn't know that we could do that. We thought we had to figure everything out up here. My website is beingwithgrief.com. You can find a lot of resources on my website, also a link to purchase my book. And I'm on Facebook, Being with Grief. Nancy Miller Leffler is my personal page. I'm also on Instagram as Being with Grief. And I'd be happy to connect with you there and share more.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. You guys, I highly recommend going to one of those resources and learning what Nancy has to offer and open up your, not just your mind, but like Nancy said, your heart into this world. It is my deep belief that it is time to take advantage of the ease and accessibility of this deeper work, that we can no longer ignore these stories that are buried in the biological systems of our body that are depleting our health and vitality, and ultimately what we have to give and offer and serve. Nancy, what you give and offer and serve, I know is in direct relation to your ability to go in and do this deep work. So please come along this journey with us. If you have stories stuck in your body and want to go through a similar process, that is the work that I do. And I also teach wellness workers in all fields, especially non-movement fields, how to kind of learn where those stories are stuck in your body, how to do that kind of excavation with the resiliency, and be able to be very body conscious. So embodiedmovementtraining.com. I will include that link as well as Nancy's information. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, and we look forward to sharing the next episode with you. Nancy, thank you. Everyone, have a good day.
Thank you.